talk about insulin, cortisol, and belly fat. So this is a big one because I don't know, a lot of times people get caught up in this. So is it, if we're especially in midlife, this this thing where it's like we haven't changed anything that we're doing, but all of a sudden the way our body looks is changing. And exercising a little bit more and changing the way that we're eating doesn't seem to help. Why does that happen? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And I know that there's like this big debate on social media, and it has been like this for a while, where it's like you either are in the it's a hormonal camp, right? It's just your hormones, or it's like, no, it's just calories in and calories out. I'm here to tell you it's both. Both things matter. And we talked a little bit about that in one of our trainings. The goal is, and the way that I believe that you want to look at it is that it's really hard to get to the place where you're focused on creating a deficit if you have weight to lose, if your hormones are completely out of whack. Like that's a really hard thing to do, and the body doesn't want to do that. So for me, it always makes sense to like, let's create hormonal balance, knowing that there's no perfect place that happens, but a good optimized place where your hormones are optimized. And then if you have weight to lose, then you can look at a caloric deficit. But we're going to talk about this from a hormonal stance, why this does affect belly fat. So, me share my screen. I think you guys can see that. All right, insulin, cortisol, and belly fat, particularly in midlife. So, first thing I want you to understand is that when it comes to hormones, a couple things. Number one, when women are talking about hormones in midlife, and when you see stuff that I'm talking about on social media, and you hear me say the word hormones, I'm not just talking about your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about insulin, cortisol. Like there are other hormones in your body that do affect these things. They all interact with each other. So keep that in mind. The second is that you got to understand that hormones are messengers. They just send signals to the cells in the body and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what you should do. Right? So kind of keep that in mind, that they're there to deliver a message. And what insulin does is it actually takes the food that you eat and it transports that food or glucose to the cells and the tissues to be used for energy, for building muscle. So what most people don't realize is that you hear like, hey, I know I need lots of protein to build muscle. You also need insulin. Insulin is necessary for that protein synthesis so that you can build muscle. Without it, you're not going to build muscle. You can drop body fat, which will make your composition look different, but you can't build muscle without that insulin. And insulin lowers blood sugar. So a lot of times people kind of combine them together. So what happens, and I think there's a slide that goes through and explains this a little bit better, is that insulin takes that blood sugar and it goes down to the cells and it knocks on the door of those cells. The insulin knocks on the door of the cells and said, hey, take this glucose in and use it, right? And by doing that, that lowers your blood sugar. So hopefully that makes sense, in that we want insulin because it actually helps that glucose get into the cell. Now, cortisol has a bad rap. Cortisol actually helps the body respond to stress or danger. It is necessary in fight or flight, right? And what it will do, remember when we talked about the metabolism and how it will then, it gets discerning in where it sends energy. So what it does is it says, hey, we need a lot of energy because there's stress or there's danger. And so it will slow down other metabolic functions to be able to provide that energy for that fight or flight or change or whatever it is that feels that you need to do. So it is necessary. It also helps to maintain blood pressure. It's necessary for your immune function and it suppresses inflammation. And when combined with other hormones during exercise, it creates a fat burning soup. So and this is why when we do the exercises at the end, we call it, everybody says it's time for Jen's breathing, that there's a reason for that, is because we're sending a signal to the brain to stop pumping those stress hormones. We want them during exercise. We don't want them throughout the rest of the day. And cortisol is necessary because it is, without an alarm clock, what wakes you up. It is also what's waking you up at that hour between 2 and 4. So if you're waking up wide awake, you can say hello to cortisol. It's called a cortisol awakening response. We just need to figure this out. And so a lot of times when people ask me about this, one of the first things that my brain will go to when we see energy, sleep disruptions, things like that, even digestion, I'll look at insulin and cortisol and that relationship because it affects those things very much so. So the insulin cortisol relationship and how they affect belly fat. Make sure there's no questions so far. I don't see any. So again, when we take in food, that food is then going to get broken down into glucose. The insulin gets released, and then it takes that, knocks on the door of the cell, and it's to be used for energy. Now, depending upon what type of food you're eating, super, processed carbohydrates, right? Simple carbohydrates, that creates a lot more glucose, right? So chronically elevated glucose, either through the types of food you're eating and or the amounts of that food that you're eating, is going to raise glucose, which then it needs is an insulin response. That elevated glucose in the blood over time has to get stored as fat. And here's kind of how this happens. Everybody's heard of this insulin resistance, right? So what happens is over time, all of this glucose, right? The insulin is trying to grab it, take it in, it goes to the cells and it knocks on the door. And because there's so much of it so often, the cells start to kind of deaf ear that message. That is the resistance. It's just like, nope, can't hear you. So then that glucose is just circulating in your bloodstream. Now the bigger problem is the chain reaction. So then what happens is the cell, even though it's ignoring that message, then sends a signal back to your brain. And inside your brain, it says, hey, we need more. We don't have enough insulin to be used. We don't have enough of this. So your body actually starts to produce more. So over time, you get more and more blood glucose in your bloodstream, right? So again, it gets stored as belly fat. It increases your risk for type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and I'd say probably in the last 5 or 6 years, we're definitely seeing more research in its connection to Alzheimer's disease. Now, here's the reverse of that. If our blood sugar is too low, cortisol rate rises, okay? So they oppose each other. If blood sugar's low, cortisol is going to come up. And this is why sometimes I'll ask you, what did you have for dinner? We try to look at that because if your blood sugar all of a sudden crashes, cortisol is going to go up. What could cause some of this is fasting for too long, skipping meals, cutting carbs, because carbs actually lower cortisol. Some of you have heard me say, listen, if you are stressed out or you wake up in the middle of the night, I get up sometimes if I can't get myself to go back to sleep, I'll get up and go eat half a banana because I know that the carbohydrates actually help lower that cortisol to calm my brain so that I can get myself to go back to sleep. Cortisol actually impairs insulin secretion. So now think about this. If it impairs insulin secretion, then I don't have anything to take that glucose into the cell, which means that my blood sugar is high. And again, as we just talked about, chronically elevated blood sugar gets stored as fat, increases your risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. Chronically elevated cortisol, your fight or flight slows non-essential, I'm turning the heat off, sorry, slows non-essential metabolic function. So that's going to be your digestion, thyroid, and your ability to burn fat. So is everybody good so far? Do I have any questions? Did I throw you? Is it too confusing or you guys got that so far? Good? All right. So how this affects midlife women specifically is that due to dropping sex hormones, particularly estrogen, we become more stress sensitive, cortisol rising, and less insulin sensitive. So all of a sudden, the things that I used to be able to handle, my body now looks at as too much of a stress. So cortisol is rising. Now, the foods that I've always eaten, now my body is not as insulin sensitive to pulling that glucose in. it becomes more resistant. So now I have more blood sugar in my bloodstream, right? That's how this happens. And all of that gets stored around the midsection. That is the estrogen connection to why you have a greater capacity to start storing fat in your midsection. So, what are the strategies that are the most impactful to balance out cortisol and insulin so that you do have the ability to burn fat? You guys have heard this before. Prioritize protein and fiber. And here's why. Where does the liver and pancreas come into play? So the question is, where does the liver and pancreas come into play? The way that it works is everything that, let me get this out of the way. That loop that I was just talking about, Jennifer, is that once your cells become insulin resistant and it sends that signal back to your brain, the hypothalamus and pituitary gland actually then send a signal to your pancreas. Your pancreas is what releases the insulin. So that's where that comes into play. And everything that we metabolize is going to go through the liver and the gut. That's where we actually metabolize everything. So if your liver is in, and I'm not sure exactly what answer you're looking for, the connection is that everything that we take in has to go through the gut and the liver to be metabolized. I'm not sure if that answers your question. If it doesn't, come back and we'll clean it up. So going back to impactful things, prioritize protein and fiber. Protein and fiber slow the uptick of blood sugar. So even in the order with which you eat, if I have chicken breast, rice, and a salad, right? If I eat the rice first, and then I piddle around with the chicken and the greens, right? That rice is the second that I put it in my system is going to start to drive that blood sugar up. However, if I eat the protein first and or the greens, it's already in my system so that when I add the carbohydrate in just in that meal, it will actually keep your blood sugar more even keeled. So that matters. Protein and fiber slow that uptick so that you don't get a big blood sugar bump, right? Meal frequency. And this is where you really do have to kind of find the place that works the best for you. I've always been a more frequent eater. My blood sugar does better with that. I'd say in the last probably 6 months, I've played with the frequency and kind of figuring out, because I know that I've had some, because of the high blood pressure and things like that, I know that I was getting some blood sugar and insulin issues. So I've played with taking it from eating 5 times a day to, I still eat 5, but the way I do it is a little bit different, to where I eat by, depending upon what time I get up, by like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, because I'm up early. And so I'll eat, I eat more than you guys probably do, 500 calories at that point. And then another 3 hours later, I'll eat another like meal, getting 40 grams of protein at each of those. And then my lunch, which is normally around 1:30, that's typically my biggest meal. And I'll still get 35, 40 grams of protein there. But I kind of, that is probably the meal where I'm feeling my fullest. And what I found is that it allows me to kind of get through the afternoon with enough energy. If I have my macros balanced pretty well, I can have something sweet. I can have those things and get through the afternoon without a ton of like cravings. And then for dinner is a little bit lighter, but I'm already satisfied. And so that actually has helped with my blood sugar and also my cravings. So if you can do a little bit higher calories meals during the day and then scale back at night, which is exactly opposite what most women do, you will find, and they've got studies that show this, that it does help even out some blood sugar issues. So you can try that. But again, both under eating and overeating creates metabolic stress. So you want to find that place where your body is the happiest, where it can function the best. Make sure I didn't miss anything. And then strength training. They call it the insulin sink, because that muscle, when you strength train, your body says, I need those calories. I need that food because I need that insulin coming in. I need that blood sugar. I need that glucose to be able to repair muscle. It's required. So that is one of, when we're looking at being able to balance all this out, I would say strength training 2 to 3 times a week, and your leisure walks. Leisure walks actually are one of the most effective ways at lowering stress hormones. Not walking at a quick clip, leisure walking. The other things you can do is adequate sleep, because it's that cortisol melatonin cycle. Again, those two oppose each other. So if cortisol is high, melatonin has to be low, right? So we want to make sure that we're in a good cycle with that. And then it comes down to stress management. And this one is probably one of the more challenging ones because, listen, guys, stress is all around us, right? We've got world stress, we've got family stress, we've got work stress, we've got exercise stress, right? We've got lack of sleep stress. And so you want to find the things that work the best for you. I know when I was back in the clubs, and I remember being one of my partners actually got me to find things that would make me laugh during the day. So I would just go out in my car and just pull up like comedy clips that I could watch that would make me laugh and kind of help me find my center. I would say now one of the things that helps me the most is breathing techniques during the day. So kind of like what we do in class, anytime your exhale is longer than your inhale, it's going to slow your heart rate down, and then your heart sends a signal to your brain to lower stress hormones. Anytime you're breathing through your mouth, that helps breathing out through your mouth, not just in. Somatic movement therapy, mobility. If you want to drag out your foam roller at night or in the middle of the day when you just need a break, foam rolling is amazing at putting your brain into a parasympathetic state. Gentle yoga, meditation, massage. It's something that I don't even know where this came from because I'm not by nature a toucher. My boyfriend's not by nature a toucher, but somehow when we're around each other, we just naturally kind of gravitate to reaching out and we just kind of stroke each other. Sometimes, like last night, we were just reading in bed and he grabbed my hand and he was just rubbing my hand while I read. It's very calming. And what I've found is that it not only, if you're like, my husband will never do that. Here's the thing. I can tell you if I really have a hard time falling asleep, I do it to him because it's very meditative, right? When I'm just doing this and then pretty soon I just fall right back to sleep. So you have to find the things that work the best for you. Orgasms also, just so you know, really good at helping put your body into a parasympathetic state. So super simple, but it may have created some questions. So let's open it up. If anybody has any questions, let's jump in and talk about it. Good. Trying to think of any questions that might come up based on this.
Hey, Jen, what do you mean by parasympathetic state?
Parasympathetic state, relaxed state. That's all that means. Parasympathetic means relaxed state. Sympathetic means heightened state. Good question. What's that?
I have a question. So how do you, excuse me, how do you figure out for blood sugar control, how do you know what your body responds best to, whether it's 5 meals a day or 3 meals a day?
That's a good question. Heather, did I answer your question? I just want to make sure I didn't skip you. Yeah?
Yep, you're good.
Thank you. So this is actually, Jean Marie, this is good because Jennifer also asked, what's your experience with glucose monitoring systems? I think that they are great for people who, if you're getting your labs done and you know you have a blood sugar issue, I think that they're great for a short-term kind of teach yourself about yourself. I think that the issue, here's my only disclaimer with that, is that I think it's kind of like my experience with the Oura Ring or any other kind of tracker, is that you can get very dialed into all the data. And it's like the first thing you look at in the morning and you're looking at it during the day. And then you become this person who creates this stress over managing your data. So for me, it's like, get the data, understand, and then get off of it, unless you're somebody who needs ongoing help with it. I think that data can be very useful because everybody is different. And this is where it's a little frustrating because I know with GLPs, we're just going to talk about this really quickly, is that I think it was something that Oprah said, in that her doctor explained to her that she has the fat gene. There's not a fat gene. It doesn't exist. However, and I didn't know this when I first started, and we didn't know this collectively as an industry when I first started in the industry, is that you can have genetic markers that make you more prone to being insulin resistant. That is a thing for sure. And that can affect it can affect a lot of things. It can affect everything that we just talked about. But what most people don't understand is that this insulin resistance doesn't just happen in the cell. It can happen in the muscle. It can happen when it happens in your brain. What happens is, remember we talked about your leptin and ghrelin? It starts to mess with those hormones to where your leptin, which is your satiation hormone, gets shut down. And so then you just are always wanting to eat. So that is a thing that can happen. So it's not like an actual fat gene, but you can be born with hereditary markers that make you more insulin resistant. That is a thing. Back to glucose monitoring, I think that it can be helpful because based on that and based on lifestyle, you could take two people and have them eat the exact same thing all day long, and their blood sugar readings would be different based on hereditary issues, based on hormonal fluctuations, based on activity, based on sleep patterns. Because you got to remember that these hormones don't work in a vacuum. They work with each other. And I always say it's like kind of your relationship with other people. The way that you behave next to your people at work is probably very different to the way that you behave with your kids, right? If you have kids or your partner, right? So like the hormones are the same way. It depends on who's in the room as to how they behave. So all of those things matter. So one person could eat a banana and be okay and get a small bump, and somebody else could eat a banana and they go sky high. I've seen people who an apple shouldn't raise it that much, and they're like, I can't even eat a half an apple because it goes sky high. And that just has to do with their biochemical response to it is very individual. So hopefully that helps. I think that it can be useful information so that you have a better understanding of what's going on. And what I like about it is that it's in real time, and it does force you to think about it, right? Nobody wants to see that bump. And it's not like a food log where you're like, I don't want to put that candy bar on my food log, so I'm going to eat it, but not put it on there. Versus if you eat it, it's going to show up. Like you can't hide it from a glucose monitor, right? So I think that it gives you good information in real time, as long as you can use that information, create a lifestyle that works, and then move on, if that helps. And
Yeah.
also frequency would impact that as well. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Glucose monitoring. Whoops, where'd it go? Do you share your morning meals? I struggle getting that much protein. Yeah, I can tell you exactly what I eat. I am a creature of habit. I don't like to think about food. I don't like cooking food. I like eating food. But I eat kind of the same stuff. So I find things that I like. I find things that work for me. And then I just put them on repeat until I get sick of them, and then I find something else. So as of late, I would say for the past probably 2 months, I make protein waffles, and I make them either with protein oats, or sometimes I will use if I know that I'm going to have oats later in my yogurt, then I won't put oats in my waffles. And I don't do them every day just because I want to get different types of fiber. So it kind of is half and half. I actually prefer it with the oats. I've gotten to really like that. But it's just a scoop of protein. It's probably 20 grams of protein. Then I do the oats with protein in it. I do a whole egg, a quarter cup of egg whites. And then I just put in like a splash of vanilla, half teaspoon of baking powder, and some like pumpkin spice, and then over the top. So I'm someone who does better with more carbohydrates. I process carbohydrates better. I don't process fats very well. I've got some issues with that. I just don't process it as well. My gallbladder is a little bit wonky. So I will still get enough fat, but I don't lean fat. And I'm somebody who lifts very frequently. Like if I could lift 5 days a week, I'm not quite there yet. We're pushing it, but I can do a solid 4 and still be okay, which means that I need those carbohydrates. So in the morning, I'll make my waffle, and then I'll drizzle a little bit of just a little bit of maple syrup over the top. And then I take a half a cup of frozen blueberries, and I do put a quarter frozen banana in the waffle too. And then I take half of that banana and I slice it up and I heat it up with the blueberries and I dump it over the top. It's delicious. It's got to be the warm blueberries. That seems to be the key. Or I'll do raspberries. So that's kind of like my first meal. My second meal could be like today I love, one of my favorite meals is roasted sweet potatoes with ground turkey. Sometimes I'll put an egg over the top just for a little bit more protein, and also I like the yolk in there. And then I'll have like maybe some raspberries with it or something. Sometimes I'll do a burrito. So I'll take that ground turkey, a little bit of refried beans, some greens, like I just make a burrito. What else do I have? Sometimes I will do Greek yogurt. So I'll do 100 grams of Greek yogurt. I do the lactose-free one. I'll put a half a scoop of my protein powder in there. So, and then I'll do a quarter cup of the protein oats, put that in the refrigerator overnight, and then I'll put a little bit of granola and raspberries over the top and eat that. Those are kind of my to-goes. Those are the pretty basic ones that I could create on repeat. Does that help, Jennifer? Let me see what I got. We tried oats overnight. Yep. I do the oats in my yogurt, and because of the yogurt I use is thicker, I will put a little bit of almond milk in there just so that it kind of absorbs everything in. And then I put the protein powder in that. And then in the morning, when I'm ready to go, I'll throw the granola on top so it's crunchy, and the raspberries. Sometimes, if I'm really in a hurry, I'll make my protein shake. And this is a little bit lower protein one, but I usually combine it with something else I'll tell you about in a second. Is I'll make my protein shake, and then I'll take my granola and I just pour my protein shake over the top. This is what I did when I was traveling last summer with my family. That's what I had for breakfast. So sometimes I'll do that because you get the crunchy in there. And then I've started doing with my coffee, because I'm taking my coffee to a half calf. So I do about 4 ounces of cold brew. I'm a cold brew fan. And then I'll pour more decaf over the top. And then I get the Koi plant-based vanilla bean pre-made protein shakes. And I'll put like a quarter of that on the top and just a little bit of creamer. And then I take my whisker and whisk that up. So when you guys see me walking around the gym with my little coffee, that's what that is. So I'm bumping my protein up that way. I also will use that same protein shake and put it in my sugar-free AW root beer in the afternoon if I want something sweet. So I just sneak it in. I make sure that I hit those big bumps, right, in the morning. And then for lunch, it's always like chicken or shrimp or beef, or there's always like a big piece of animal protein. And then I just load up on veggies and I just eat whatever after that till I'm full. And then same thing for lunch. By then I start to kind of ease off just so that I can digest stuff before dinner. Hopefully that helps. Hydrating aside, keeps moving. Hydrating aside, does drinking water lower your cortisol level? For example, drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning or in the evening. It could be a byproduct of that. It wouldn't necessarily create, as far as I know, there's not a direct connection to that. But by hydrating, you have to remember, if you are truly hydrating, if the cells are actually pulling that water in, then you're basically turning the lights on to your overall metabolic system. In the morning, you want your cortisol rising anyway. So there's not as far as I know, a direct correlation to drinking water and it instantly lowering your cortisol level. I would say it would have a bigger metabolic impact. I've started using chocolate protein shake as a coffee creamer. Yes, it's good. And way creamier. Like I find that it's just like a creamier way to get your coffee in. And what I like about doing the half calf is that I can drink more of it. And so I enjoy that as well. All good questions. Is there anything on here that you needed more clarification on? Those were really great questions. Helpful?
So aside from like the breathing and taking a walk and stuff like that, so if you're going through like just a period of just crazy stress, what else can you do to try and reduce the impacts of that?
It really just depends on finding the thing that works for you. And you just got to try some stuff. So like we're going to do something really quick. I'll show you how to do this. And you just have to understand how your physiology works. So we're going to do a physiological sigh together, right? So physiological sigh, I think we've done this a couple times in the StrongHER class, where you're going to breathe in as deeply as you can and then take one more quick sip. And then you're going to sigh it out as slow as you can. So we're going to do it together. I'm going to do it with you. Ready? We're going to go. We're going to do one more. And there you have it. That from a physiological standpoint, I don't know if you guys notice, like the first time as you start to sigh, I literally can feel like a wave coming through my body. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed how my voice has changed. Can you guys hear the difference in my voice? It will change your physiology. So you have to kind of wrap your brain around, listen, spa days are great, but it doesn't mean that that's what it requires. It could just be like, shit's crazy. I just need a second, right? So sometimes, and there have been plenty of days like this recently because there's a lot going on, that's what I get in. That's what I do, right? Or I take 5 minutes. There's a new app that I uploaded that I really like. It's called the Breath Coach. And I pay $5 a month for it, and I literally only use one of their things, but it's relaxing waves. So I've started doing this one right after I work out because I am notorious for having you guys do your breathing and then me going, I don't have time. So I've started making myself like lay down on the floor, put my feet up on the thing. I turn a timer on this for 5 minutes and I make myself do that now before I get home. Because I used to tell myself, I'm gonna do it when you get home, and then I don't do it when I get home. So I do it before I leave the gym. I will also do that during the day. On days where I know that I did not get enough sleep and I just need to close my eye, like I just need to reset, I will use Andrew Huberman's non-sleep deep rest. You can go to YouTube, just plug it in, NSDR, Andrew Huberman. It's a 10-minute little reset. And it's just basically using breath and feeling the different perceptions in your body to help basically drop you into a very relaxed state and creates a reset. So I use that, especially on a night where if I don't get enough sleep and I'm up earlier than I want to be, then I will just go do that really quick because it gives me kind of that reset to kind of get going. I will tell you if you do this that I do recommend that you also set an alarm if you've never done it. Most people will fall asleep and then you'll wake up and be like, what happened? And you just feel like he hypnotized you. I've had people say that, like, that was freaky. And I'm like, a lot of times, especially if I'm really tired, I drop out. Like I'm listening to him and the next thing I know, I'm like, what just happened? So that's one that I use. Today, I actually got out and I went for a walk, and I didn't go as long as I wanted, but I just wanted to sit outside, and I'm by the water and the sun was out for a few minutes. So I was like, I'm just going to sit here for 10 minutes and not touch my phone. Watch a little dog walking around along the water. So you just have to find the things that work for you. Those are the things that are quick resets for me. At night, one of the
How do you do that? Oh, sorry.
how
Did you do that breathing thing again?
physiological sigh.
Yeah.
So the physiological sigh is you take a big deep breath in and then try to get another quick sip and then you sigh it back out.
Does it matter if you do it through your nose or your mouth?
You breathe in through your nose, you breathe out through your mouth.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Non-sleep deep rest. Yep. What is the name of the Huberman recording again? It's Andrew Huberman. He has a podcast. So if you go to YouTube and just plug in NSDR, and then by then it'll probably pull it up, and or just type in Andrew after that, and it'll pull him up. It's a 10-minute. He has another one that's longer. I didn't like the longer one. I like the 10-minute one. But you can try to, try him out. Oh, this is a good question. Jennifer asks, why do cortisol levels increase in the middle of the night, causing us to wake up? A couple of reasons. So it could be that your cortisol levels get flipped around. So let's say that you get up in the morning and you don't eat anything, and the first thing you grab is coffee. Now, some people can do this. However, if you are doing that first thing in the morning and you're sensitive to that, what can happen, and maybe you go to a class, maybe you start lifting weights, you're on an empty stomach, you got a little coffee in your system, and now cortisol was already starting to rise, and then you spiked it even higher, right? And then the next thing you know, because you don't have any food in your system, your blood sugar crashes. And so now you have this insulin cortisol loop going all day, because when it crashes, what do you think you reach for? Anybody?
Sugar.
Sugar. I need sugar. Your brain knows that, right? I'm crashing. I need sugar. So you reach for the pastry or the donut or the bagel or what, right? So then it rises, and because what you reached for spiked you, instead of evening you out, you're doing this all day long. That's one way that can happen. You can get out of sync. So your circadian rhythm for cortisol should be, it starts to rise right before you wake up. And then at some point it hits that kind of tipping point, you wake up, and it will continue rising for roughly 90 minutes afterwards, right? And then it should just slowly kind of come down. Maybe you do a workout, it bumps up, and then it comes back down, so that by the time you're getting ready to go to bed, it's lower. Melatonin rises, you go to sleep, right? And then it just slowly goes into the next circadian rhythm. That can get flipped to where, if you've ever noticed, like, you're just dog-ass tired all day long, and then you get so excited, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna sleep so good tonight. And then you don't. It's because they got flipped, right? So you got to figure out, and one of the ways that you can do that is you start with your waking hours, sunlight, water, not coffee first thing in the morning. You're hydrating first thing in the morning. You're getting some movement in so that you can control, you're getting protein and fiber in throughout the day so that you can get that to even out. Because remember, blood sugar and cortisol, they have a relationship. If I affect my insulin levels, if I affect my blood sugar levels, it 100% is going to affect my cortisol levels. So we want to balance that out. The other thing that you can look at is what you're eating for dinner. If I'm eating straight pasta, it's going to spike me and then drop me. And once it drops, remember, when blood sugar gets too low, cortisol has to come up to put you back up. So it's not that the carbohydrates are bad, because carbohydrates actually lower cortisol, right? But that's the initial response. If it goes too high, it means it's going to go too low too quickly. So what we want to do is make sure that we have enough protein and fiber in there so that we're not getting this. We want this so that it stays even and then slowly comes down throughout the night, so that when it's time to wake up, cortisol can then come up and push it back up. Does that make sense? And then the other is just midlife. If your estrogen and progesterone are doing some wacky stuff, that is going to have an impact on cortisol and insulin. Does that answer help, hopefully, Jennifer? Question, is it better to work out in the morning versus afternoon? The best time to work out is when you will work out. There is no physiological benefit that outweighs the behavior, if that helps. Find when you'll do it and do it. That's what matters the most. For the 6 a.m. classes, would it be better for blood sugar to eat a little something before class? And if so, what would be examples of what to eat? Yes, it would be better for you to eat a little something. What that little something is highly dependent on you. If you are not used to eating, So like you guys just heard me describe a 500 calorie meal that I eat before I come and train you guys at 5:30 in the morning. Because my body is used to eating that, right? And I stop eating at 6:30. So my body's ready to eat again. I also strength train 4 days a week. So that's how I can do it. Now, if I was going to, let's say I got up that early and I was going to come work out, one of my favorite pre-workouts are those applesauce packets. I like the ones with cinnamon in them. And I'll slam a couple of those. It's 120 calories. It's easily digestible carbohydrates, and it's going to get enough in there to where you're not going to create a huge spike in cortisol. It's something that your body can handle, and it'll give you just enough energy that you can get through class. And then you can kind of play with it. Like, does a protein bar work? You want carbohydrates before you work out because you'll work out better. So you want that. And then you go, okay, can I handle a little bit of protein? Remember, protein and fat are harder to digest. So you definitely don't want a lot of fat because that slows everything down. You don't want a ton of fiber, but you do probably want a little bit of protein if you can digest it and not feel like sluggish. So that's probably my favorite. You could do half a banana, piece of toast, things like that. Protein bar, keep it light, and then play with it if you're like, oh, because what may happen is, let's say that you start with those 2 applesauce packets, and then a week later you're like, I am hungry in the morning. Then you just got to adjust it from there. Does that help? Have a glass of water in the morning with lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. Does this help with cortisol? It helps with digestion for sure. Both the lemon juice and apple cider vinegar are really good for digestion. And so what that does is, if you think about the metabolism as a whole, it's going to, again, keep the lights on in other areas. The metabolism works based on what it needs. It's going to send energy where it's necessary. And so if you're aiding digestion, then it means it doesn't have to send as much energy to try to handle that. So there's energy to go other areas. Doesn't directly affect cortisol, but by being hydrated and taking burden off the digestive system, could it help? Yes. I think I got everything. Did I miss anything? Helpful? So real quick, based on this, what's one thing that you're thinking, ooh, I could try this to balance this out? Or what's one thing that you're like, oh, maybe this is why this is happening? Jump into the chat really quick. Let's see what you guys come up with. Because I want you guys to be able to implement this stuff in ways that work for you. The information is everywhere. You can get this online, right? I want you to be able to like look at this and go, okay, here's how I can implement this week. We've got one, eating before my 6 a.m. class. Yep. 100%. It's going to make a difference. Find something small. You don't want something big. We have had a couple people that started with bigger meals, and like halfway through class, they're like, ugh. I'm like, yeah, too much. We don't want anything big. Start with something small. Eating something if I'm struggling to fall back asleep from 2 to 3. Yep. You could use your breathing for that. You could create an orgasm if you wanted to. But if you just can't get yourself to go back to sleep, get up and go have a little bit of carbohydrates and then try again. Those are both really good.
Jen, I have a quick question.
Yep.
Everybody their straight go-to is the banana, and I can't eat bananas because I have something called latex fruit syndrome. And bananas are one of the things that really, really upset my stomach. So is there any fruit or veg that can become like a banana for me?
Bananas are great. The reason why people always go for a banana because they are a higher sugar. So if you're like, don't eat bananas. Yes, bananas are great. They also have potassium in them. And they're easily digestible. But if you can't eat those, I would go for the applesauce packets because they are also, because they're not like eating an apple. They don't have as much fiber. So they're just sugar, right? Not added sugar, but they're apple sugar. So those are easy to do. You could do a piece of toast, like a piece of sourdough. In terms of fruit, I would say raspberries are good. Pears would be good. I mean, any fruit that you can get in would probably work. You just got to play with them a little bit and find the ones that give you just enough that aren't loaded or heavy. Fruit usually isn't. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just like everybody's always like, oh, have a banana, have a half a banana, do a banana. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to see me throw up, I'll do a banana.
Sure. She's like, yeah. Heather says she is also a fellow non-banana person, so you are not alone in the world. So yeah, I would just try different fruits and see. Keep it simple. Ooh, when in season, watermelon would probably be an easy one. This is just water, right? Cantaloupe, melons would probably be good when you get them in season. So,
Part of the thing is melons are part of the problem.
so also no melons.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. It's something about their it's something about their biology or whatever. Some sort of they're too close to latex, and I have a latex allergy.
Yeah, we got to work on that one. That one stinks. I really don't know. I mean, I guess I do know if I couldn't eat bananas, I wouldn't eat them, but that would suck. I love bananas. Yeah, play around with that one and see what comes up with it because I do like fruit as a like get something in because it's just so easy and they're typically light, so they just give you enough.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, watermelons are fine. It's the cantaloupes and the other ones that are problematic.
Yeah, try them. Move around more, up from my desk every hour, considering a glucose monitoring system too. So those are all good things. Yeah, just getting up and moving. Another good blood sugar one is if you can, after you eat, go for a short walk. That's also really good for blood sugar. All right. All really good questions, guys. Good job. All right. So really quick, unless last call for any questions. We're good?